Okay, hi! I just realized my plant is being very excitable today, but, anywho, hi, I'm Gail Carriger, and we're talking about books and things and life. My hair is a little bit of a mess, for which I apologize. These things happen. This is, ostensibly what we were talking about, which is, my new upcoming sci-fi book. This is book 1 in a series. So we'll put that there since that's the topic. Oh, no, and then I sit in front of it. Oh, move it over a little bit. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. This is the sound of my shell drapes. There. It looks like it's kind of haunting me or spying on me or something. Anyway, I had my lovely assistant print that up as a poster because, yay, thank you, Charity. Anyway, lovely assistant printed this up as a poster because I don't have a print edition yet. Still working on it. Everybody's being lovely, and I'm just fixing things. Oh, including my hair. Everybody's being lovely and telling me where they're tuning in from, which always makes me so happy. Lavender wants to know already, this is my official cover matching outfit. And let me tell you, one of the reasons I'm so excited about this cover is this palette is one of my favorites. So I have so many, it turns out, so many different like dresses and outfits in this like teals and mints and turquoises and black and dark blue range. So I'm all set up for this cover. Turns out I am ready for this one. Yeah, so it's not official. And everybody see how Lavender put their question with the question mark at the beginning. If you have a question for me, if you can put the question mark at the start of the question and then also at the end, it just is easier for me to find when I'm scrolling through. But in the meantime, do let me know if you would like to, where you're tuning in from. I love that this is global reach, so it always makes me happy. But there it is. That is the new cover. So I am here to answer any questions you might have about this book, this series. No spoilers, of course. Can't have that. But I'm happy to talk about that. Anything else you want to talk about, character-wise, other books-wise. Robert says blue is the best. Blue is the best. I do love the blue family. I also love the green family, which is why I like turquoises and teals. Irene wants to know, what is the genre? Okay, that's a really good question because this ties into, I think, one of the reasons New York was kind of like, we love this book, but we don't know how to sell it. And that's because it is a genre that I love, but in which there are very few books, it is I would call it technically YA space opera. So it is one main character, but it's kind of a found family ensemble cast. So we're talking like a Becky Chambers sort of thing, but it is about an entertainment industry in the galaxy. So it's about aliens who are waging a culture war essentially, and they are trying to take over the galaxy using an advanced form of entertainment technology in which song and music manifests as a immersive color, like kaleidoscopic color experience that humans in particular may or may not find addictive. And whether that is a good thing or not, and sort of like the power of art and celebrity. So it's got some high concepts for a YA to deal with, but I think it suits it. I think it suits sort of the discourse on fandom and teenagers, because when we are that age, that's when we tend to get obsessed with music or art, or we get really passionate about a band or a group or a fandom, a piece of media, a book series, or perhaps television series or something. So that's why it's YA. I would call it a little mature, so it's kind of a little bit like the Finishing School series. It does deal with adventure and mature themes, so it's not necessarily for super young readers, it's for teens. But the main character is, we're not sure quite what his age is, but he's basically 18 in the series, so the characters are a little bit older. So there it is. That's kind of the age range and everything. But it's technically YA space opera. I might call it new adult space opera, but that isn't really, as much as YA space opera doesn't really exist, new adult space opera really doesn't exist. So I'm scrolling through to see what other questions you have. It is science fiction, and it is in the Tinkered Stars universe. So if you have read either, oh, I wasn't ready for this. Usually I have all my books. If you've read either this one or this one, it is the same universe. There are no crossover characters, but there are crossover alien races. So some of the aliens you have met in either of these two books will and do show up in this new series. It just takes, it's a whole galaxy I'm playing with, therefore things can take place in different parts of that galaxy. So yes. Oh, thank you very much. Dick has shared this with the Parasol Protectorate group, so nobody else needs to do that. Lavender Sky is asking, I posted recently, that post was supposed to go out next month, but it went out this month. But I did post recently a really interesting TEDx talk from a academic who researches this kind of thing about parasocial relationships. But her talk was actually about fictional parasocial relationships. So this is how people form emotional bonds with characters, with, invisible friends. And is a really interesting talk. The link is in the page, my Facebook page, so it's like just a couple down, so you can find it really easily. And yes, I have actually a pretty extensive blog post that's all of the research I did for this series, because I did a lot of research for this series, not just parasocial relationships, but the music industry. There's quite a bit, especially in the second book of the series, about what causes people to become like stalker fans and super obsessive fans, what in K-pop is called sasaeng fans. So I did a lot of research into what little data and psychoanalysis we have on that kind of mental breakdown that occurs. So because personally, I have a little bit of experience with stalker fans, and so I've sort of personally invested in making sure that that part of being a celebrity is reflected in the books, but also like I'm just very curious as to what causes that to happen in the human psyche. So I did a lot of research into that. So like for a pretty frivolous, pretty fun 3-book series, there's actually quite a bit of background research. It's me, the scientist in me likes this part. So I have an epic post, but because of the nature of the way the story unfolds, some of the research I had to do is actually kind of spoilers for the books. So that post was not gonna, that kind of background Easter eggy, all of the behind the scenes stuff, that's not gonna go live until after all 3 books are out. But all 3 books will be out in succession this year, so you won't have to wait too long for it. That's, for me, that's like, as a reader, that's the most exciting thing about this series, is it is a linked series. Each book follows the next one. It's not like my Supernatural Society or Delightfully Deadly books. You can't read these as standalones. You need to read them 1, 2, 3. But I'm going to give them all to you pretty quickly so that you don't have to wait between books. So it's going to be 1 book every 2 months. So that's pretty much the second half of the year. So starting June 1st is when the first one comes. And yeah, and that was just because as a reader, when I get invested in a series, I really want to be able to just read the whole series. And part of it's because I wrote all 3 of them pretty much back to back. So I just have to kind of put them into production. So the waiting is mostly just me making sure that it's had its developmental edit and copy edit pass and everything. So yeah, and it's moving along quickly. So I'm confident that I can make the schedule. I simply haven't announced what like the titles are for the other books or anything like that, because generally speaking, once I do that, people start posting it to places like Goodreads and stuff, and then the metadata just gets janky, and it's a lot of me running around playing whack-a-mole trying to correct everything. So I tend to hold off announcing titles until I'm ready to upload everything so that it's all neat and tidy. You know me. Yeah, I'm really excited about this series. It's really fun, but it also explores just like really interesting things that are very connected to my life now, but also my own history, specifically as an anthropologist. I've always been wildly delighted by culture and wildly interested in how art and culture interface with each other, because I was an archaeologist, which meant I looked at the manifestation of that. I looked at the art objects that cultures created and extrapolated how that represents culture, interacts with culture, spreads culture, all that sort of thing. So, and this is sort of that for me. It's very much my past and history. So that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about it. Right, any other questions? We can keep talking about this. I'm happy to, one of the questions that was asked ahead of time was, is this an open-ended series? And the answer is no. This is it. Like this is you get all 3 books. The story is contained in these 3 books. So you will get, each book has a beginning, middle, and end, and the whole series has a beginning, middle, and end. So you will get all of it as one nugget. And yeah, so the first one is kind of built on the chassis of a kind of reality singing competition. So this main character Fex is recruited to become a god, to become one of a pantheon of these singers, but he has to attempt to win a place, which means trying to form a pantheon. So you have to form a group in order to survive, basically. And so that's what this first book is about. The second book, they're on tour together with another group that's like a dominant group that's like super famous already. So there's a whole like they're sort of traveling through the galaxy. So the sort of chassis for that one is like a road trip kind of idea, but it's through the galaxy, going on tour, performing everywhere. And in each book you find out more about the aliens, why they're doing this, what's going on with it, whether the aliens are good or bad, we don't know. Are they on our side or not? That kind of thing. And then in the final book, the entertainment group goes to a world that is in deep civil war and sort of gets embroiled in politics on this alien world. So those are the 3 kind of narrative chassis for the book. But the first one is kind of a singing competition kind of thing, but with aliens. So I think it's gonna be super fun. I think you're gonna really like Fex. Fex is definitely like one of my grumpy but like super squishy soft center characters, where like he's grumpy and solitary and alone because he's a refugee character. He's kind of escaped from his own sector of space, and so he's really looking, he doesn't realize it, but he's really looking for his family and his group and his people. And so this is kind of that story for him, and learning to open up and learning how to love and the different kinds of love that there are that connection can bring with it. So yeah, and then his love interest is adorable. So I think you'll be really excited about it. I'm really bouncy about this series. It's just been, I mean, I was open about this at the time, but like one of the things that the pandemic did to me is like made it really hard for me to write for a while, for a longer while than is normal for me. I've had times when I've had to take a break from writing, just, my brain isn't there, I'm dealing with a bunch of other stuff. I think a lot of people experienced this, but this was I wrote Vixen Ecology. That was like one of my processing pieces during lockdown, but it was this series that really kind of broke me free and broke me back out and like made me love writing again and really feeling vibrant about writing. So I hope that kind of translates onto the page. I think it is, kind of fun, and it's like me having a dialogue about art, but also loving that I get to do it again. I don't know how else to put it. Lavender, you're asking increasingly long questions, but I think I can read them. So after reading Crud Rat and Tinkered Stars, Lavender says they're kind of fascinated by how the sentience in the deep past, the Tinkered. So this series is called the Tinkered Stars because there's a lore in the universe about the Tinkers, which are kind of an ancient proto race that seems to have had a hand in peopling this universe. And yeah, as I add to that particular narrative, the narrative about how this happened, you will get more and more clues as to how it works. And I think by the end of this series, you should know, or at least have a really good idea. And if not, we'll have another discussion about it in the live. Yeah, because I know exactly how it happened, or how I envision, sentience spreading throughout the universe. And it is not the way a lot of other sci-fi authors tackle this. I have a very, she says, kicking me, a very specific point of view. And it is very clearly conceived. So this is a universe where the way it was established, in terms of peopling of different planets and stuff like that, I came up with, but all of the sort of technology and kind of some of the background stuff about how like FTL works, that is actually the result of something my best friend and I used to discuss and argue about in high school. So this has been the ideas for this universe have been like germinating in the back of my head for longer than I care to admit, shall we say. Or I guess I just did admit it, but I'm not going to tell you exactly how many years ago that was. Yes, there will be no alien poetry, although maybe as a joke at some point. You know me, I do love alien poetry. Yes, I entered science fiction via comedic sci-fi. I wasn't really into science fiction until I discovered Douglas Adams, and I used to listen to the original radio play of The Hitchhiker's Guide, and that was how I kind of started to really enjoy sci-fi, was through comedic stuff. So I kind of tend to think of science fiction as something that has sort of strong comedy elements. That is what Dick's comment is alluding to, for anybody who's curious. Other questions? For alien poetry, A Memory Called Empire. Ty has a recommendation for everybody. Much love out there. I'm trying to think what else we need to, I have other questions about it. So it's a series. That's how it's connected. So Fex, the main character, is a crud rat. So in a weird way, this is the background information on his previous life. So it's alluded to, but you meet him when he's managed to escape. So well after he was a crud rat. But he does use the skill sets that come into play in this book for performance. So in this book, you sort of see eventually our main character use the skill set that she develops for defense and for like physical defense, And in this one, you see him use it for entertainment value. So it just me playing with the background that's set up in here. But you do not have to have read this one. It will just give you a little bit of a clearer idea on what the main character's backstory is. I don't intend to, at least at the moment, I don't intend to write that backstory. Ooh, recommendations on playlists for the books. I will have playlists for you for this one. And because there's a sort of synesthesia element to these books, so the idea is that the music is visual, I put together like YouTube playlists specifically of mostly K-pop that have like strong visual elements that kind of tie in to the series. So don't worry, I have a playlist coming, and it's a visual playlist. I think it'll be really fun. Irene wants to know if there will be a physical edition. So things in the print industry are still pretty chaotic, and the quality has been really bad on a lot of the print books. At least it was a couple weeks ago, last time I was listening to the chatter. So these are going to have to go through a serious proof phase, which means one of the reasons I'm trying to get this book ironed out quicker is because I need to upload it, get it print, get it sent to me, check to see what the quality controls are like. hope that everything's okay. Which is a very long way of saying I'm going to try, and with any luck it will be within that window. So essentially they don't let us do pre-orders on print if we're doing it ourselves, which I am with this series. So I can't set it up for pre-order. I can only press the like launch it button on the 2 vendors that I use. I use Drafted Digital and Amazon, and then it puts it through their quality control, and so that can take 6 hours or it can take 6 days. You just don't know. It's kind of at their whim. And so I usually do that, you know, like a couple of days before the digital book or right around when the digital book is. So I try to time it, but frankly, the timing is not up to me. And I also don't control like their printing and shipping. And like I said, there's been some serious supply chain issues with publishing in general in terms of print, like just getting paper and binding it properly and like getting the right glue for the spines has been apparently very complicated. I don't know. I'm not in charge of any of the printing presses or anything. So even if it's listed and ready, I'm not entirely sure on like the timing on the shipping of those books. And there's absolutely nothing one tiny author can do about it, I'm afraid to say. But that kind of holds for everybody's print editions right now. So the answer, Irene, is I will try my best to make it at the same time. But my best might not be good enough, unfortunately, given the current state of the industry. But I will definitely try my best. So that's the print. And then audio, I actually do have an update for you. I'll talk about this in the next chirp as well. So you don't have to pay very close attention. But essentially, the narrator who I really want is pretty booked. But I do want a very good narrator for this. This is going to be because it is a book about singing and performing, a series about it, and for various reasons some of the aliens have very weird voices that are like plot points, so those are going to need to be manipulated by my producer. So this isn't just like an easy narration job. This is going to be a pretty complicated narration job. So I wanted to work with somebody who can do sci-fi, can invent accents, right? If you think about this from a narrator perspective, sci-fi is particularly difficult for narrators because they have to like invent alien accents, for example. How do you do that? I mean, that seems like such a crazy talent to me. So I wanted somebody who can handle sci-fi, who has kind of the voice I want for my main character. And then I need to make sure my production guy, who's amazing, Brian, I need to make sure he's lined up because he's going to need to do some voice manipulation as well. And then of course we have to go back and forth about how to pronounce all the different aliens and the character names and all that sort of thing. So I promise that the audio is coming, but it will be delayed, more delayed than I like. I'm sorry. It is. I don't want to make any promises, but definitely the soonest is going to be the beginning of next year. I'm so sorry, but like I'm just not willing to compromise. I grew up on audiobooks and I really want high quality audiobooks. So I pay more than most authors do for my audiobooks. I pay a producer for my audiobooks, which not everybody does. And I am willing to wait for the right narrator for those audiobooks as well. So I'm sorry to say that means you guys are waiting for audio also. However, as a Prezi, I think what I'm going to do for the next Facebook Live, which will be next month, May, the second weekend, as usual, the second Saturday, it's always the same time, I'm going to read out loud for you. I'm going to read from this book for you. So you will, for those of you who are newer to me in general, I almost never read my books. And I almost never read my books because a lot of my books are set in the UK, and for obvious reasons, I do not have a British accent. However, the sci-fi is not set in the UK, so I feel a little bit more comfortable doing it. But I'm going to drop a live that's going to be me reading the first scene, most of the first scene, possibly the whole first chapter of Divinity 36. So you can hear what it sounds like. I know I don't really love it, the authors reading or narrating their own works, but I have learned over the years that a lot of readers actually really like to hear books read by authors because they like to know how the author pronounces these things in their own head and what the cadence is like for the author. And so I thought this time around I'd give you all that perk. Don't worry, I'll also post it to YouTube afterwards and everything, but that'll be next month. That's our little special, exciting Gail thing. And that was a very long answer to the print edition. So we covered print and audiobook. I'm so glad, there's a couple comments about the audiobooks. I'm so glad you guys like my audiobooks because like I said, I do put like sort of extra effort into them because I worry about them. I want them to be good. Dick wants to know, would it be an option to publish the audio for part 1, 2, 3 in one volume? It is. That's something that I could, yes. And because it is a continuation, that's something I could do. I would only do it direct. But if you guys wanted that, that's actually not a problem at all. That's a really good idea. Must make a note. Publish the whole Tinkered Starsong series as one audiobook. Like a bundle. So that would be many hours of listening. Series as a bundle. It would not be an option. I mean, I'm not exclusive. I'm not going to go exclusive to Audible. So it might also be an option to do it. So I would have to do a digital bundle of all 3 books packaged together, and then I could also do an audio bundle. It's just the way Amazon assets work. So that, yeah, I would entertain that as well. But it would be a lot easier and a lot more efficient to do it just via direct sale, at least to start with. And that would be a way for me to gauge whether people are really interested in it or not. Normally, Amazon doesn't like you to publish the same content in multiple different ways. But I don't think there's anything in the terms of service on Audible that says I absolutely cannot do it. So I'll look into it. That's a good idea. But I'll definitely do it via the website, and that's not a problem at all. Once I have all the assets. Like, I'll have assets means all of the audiobooks on MP3. But yeah, I could definitely do something like that. That's a good idea. Look at you all giving me ideas. Next question. Sue says, if I put the Tinkered Starsong books in one print book, okay, so that is called an omnibus edition, sometimes known as a collected edition. To make matters extremely confusing, for some strange reason over the last however many years, the internet has taken to calling those bundles. Back in my day, a bundle actually meant different authors collected together, but now a bundle could be the same author. That's for digital ebooks. But essentially what you're asking is all 3 books together in one volume. As a print edition, this is something that I am thinking about pitching to Subterranean. Don't tell them. I haven't talked to them at all about it. But here's the problem. Take a look at this, everybody. So this is the Subterranean Delightfully Deadly. Look how fat that is. This is 2 novella-length books and 1 novel-length book. It is, and Subterranean is like, this is one of the fattest books they've actually ever published. These books, the Tinkered Starsong books, are all full-length books. So they're all the same length. They're like full books, everybody. They're the same length as like Solace is. Like, this is a full, proper series. No novellas, no monkeying around. Like, these are media. They're not super long. I don't write epic. That's not. But they're proper books. So it'd probably be twice as fat if it were all in one printed. And we're talking encyclopedia action here. I honestly don't know if Subterranean's printing press has that capacity. I honestly don't know who has that capacity in this day and age. I would love it. I think you can see from the cover art, I'm very into the sort of deco propaganda style, and the books from the 1920s to the 1940s were printed like this, but obviously with different cover art style. And I think it would make a absolutely stunning hardcover. but it would be massive. So, yeah, but I will, you know, a lot of this, honestly, a lot of things like how fast I can do the audio, you know, whether I go to Subterranean to ask about a hardcover, it really depends on the sales. Like, everything kind of rides on how well the series does. Essentially, the series kind of earns its ability to get fancy editions or this editions or that editions. You know, like Subterranean's not going to do it if they don't think there's enough people out there to buy something like that, especially if it's a complicated thing like a super massive book. But like I said, I haven't talked to them about it, but that would be my temptation if I were to do something like that. To continue to answer your question, Sue, if I tried to do a paperback that fat with that many pages in it, I don't think the current state of print on demand would allow for a book that fat that didn't risk it falling apart. The quality control's just not there for really fat books like that. You really need a specialist publisher. I mean, I'm sure Amazon or whoever would accept it, but whether it would end up with a nice looking book or not, and a book that really held together and didn't fall apart easily, I doubt it. So that is why an omnibus of the print of all three of them is only likely if I can find a specialist press to handle it. Because they're big books. And I mean, they're just book, you know, from the sci-fi fantasy world, they're just books. Like, this is just the length that books were when I was a kid. Books are now all kind of different lengths depending on the genre, but yes, that is the other option. As Charity and others have said, the other option is to convince Subterranean to do these as specialist print editions, and you know, where each book individually also has a hardcover. But these days, most of the time, if I do a hardcover with them, it's a special thing. So it's like a collector's thing. So it's not going to come out ahead of time. It's not going to come out until after these books have been out in the world. In other words, when I release in this day and age, I tend to release in trade paperback. I tend to release in this size and in digital, and then audio and everything else kind of comes after. Yeah. Sarah says the fattest book they ever owned was a 40-year-old paperback back when they didn't fall apart. I remember those paperbacks that were just like these door stoppers. Like the paperback was almost as as fat as it was wide. No, what were they? 3x5s, 3x7s or something, and so they were like, you get these like 3-inch ones that were just massive, and they did hold together. I had a couple fall apart on me as well. But yeah, you get those epic fantasies. And to get in the weeds of like the book industry back then, the industry standard and sort of the divider page number wise between what was and wasn't considered an epic was 250 pages. So if you had a book, and that was because for mass market paperback, which was what those little ones were, you had to change the paper ream. So you could put one ream in for 250 pages, and then after that you'd have to change the ream. And immediately, the moment you had to do that, it became a much more expensive book to produce. And so if you were going to write something very, very long, you would usually try to keep it under 250 pages or go massively over 250 pages, because at that point they're changing the ream anyway. So that's how it used to be. And of course, these days, we don't even speak in pages anymore, because, at least most of us don't, because it's word count that kind of falls out and calculates. So I don't really kind of know how many pages anything I write is anymore, because I only think in terms of word count, because we're thinking about the way digital is, and then we're going to be thinking about obviously the different size means you have different page numbers, right? So if I do a slightly bigger size book, it's going to be a slightly skinnier book. If I do a smaller, it's going to be fatter, etc., etc. Unless I change the font size, which, as I've gotten older, I really don't like putting my font size down smaller because I find it so difficult to read small these days. So yes, fat books. Fat books are an interesting, yeah. I just don't read that many fat books anymore, and I certainly never really wrote them. Any other questions? This is fun. Sci-fi. We're talking a little bit about AI. I've been sort of loosely paying attention to it. I have very mixed feelings all over the place on AI. So yeah, I don't know. Suspicious, I suppose, is how I would put it at the moment. There is an allusion to an AI sort of thing in this series, but it is not part of the main plot. And people talk about missing those huge fantasy books. Yes, one of the reasons, so I transitioned, I'm mostly an e-reader, for those of you who don't know. Pretty much the only paper copies of books I tend to have these days are either nonfiction, because I'm using them for research and I'm scrawling in them, and I'm terrible. I'm brutal to books. I'm always making notes and things in them. I know, I'm a monster. Or my own books. I don't really collect books anymore. And that's for two reasons. One, I travel all the time. At least I did, and now I am again. And it's just easier for me to have all of the books with me. And two, I can enlarge the font on my e-reader. And I am going ever blinder in my old age. So I really love being able to enlarge that font. It's so nice. Today my eyes are just, I didn't sleep well last night and my eyes are so tired and I'm just like squinting at my phone trying to read the font. I wish I could enlarge it. Charity asks book snack question. Ooh, yes. Any snacks needed to start? This is my favorite. So one of the things you all tell me all the time is that my books make you hungry. And I was talking with a bunch of fellow authors recently, and we were debating what makes for cozies. And we're talking about this new broader category of cozies. So cozy mysteries have been around for a while, right? And then Becky Chambers sprung on the scene, and a few other authors, and now we have cozy sci-fi, which I would call this relatively cozy sci-fi. And then Travis, forget his last name, but the book is Legends and Lattes, sort of bounced onto the scene with cozy fantasy. And so now we seem to have little subgenres of cozy fic, and one of the things that we agreed on amongst us authordom is that one of the things cozies tend to do is they have a lot of food in them. So, as everybody is getting together at a cafe or doing this or doing that. So to answer your question with this series, yes, it will probably make you hungry. The main character starts out as a barista on a forgotten moon in the middle of a trade center somewhere. And so he is making drinks, but of course he is making drinks for aliens and he is making drinks for humans and all these different kinds of drinks. And this is far future, and so I get to play with the idea of what foods now would still exist. So one of the things I'm telling you right now that in my universe still exists is bubble teas, drinks with stuff in them. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of debate about how to define tea and coffee when these things are coming from alien worlds. So there's that kind of thing. Fex, my main character, at one point one of the other characters calls him a beverage psychic because he can kind of meet you and have a little conversation with you and then figure out what your drink should be. So I think you want this thing. And he's always inventing drinks as well. Then as the series progresses, he starts to get he kind of falls in love with the kitchen. He's never had a kitchen before. Because, space, and that's just not something that's a luxury that you don't have when you're on colony moons and things like that. So he eventually, starts to learn to cook. And let me tell you another thing, which I deeply believe about the state of the far future universe, is that everybody has noodles. Noodles are a thing that continue. So for those of you who ran around looking for purple noodles to eat after this book series, we did find purple noodles. You're probably gonna want noodles again after this one. There's a whole scene where they're all arguing about and talking about their fond memories for different kinds of noodle dishes from their home planets and childhoods and stuff like that. So that was a long way of me saying noodles. Noodles and bubble teas and beverages are probably gonna be something you're into. There's a very amusing bit about a plate-sized potato chip, which comes from one other quadrant of the galaxy, so you might find yourself craving some potato chips. So me and my carbs. I do love my carbs. Yes. Oh, we had a couple of comments in the comments in the feed about the name of the author, Travis Baldry, for Legends and Lattes. But yes, book snacks. Get your noodles on standby. Get your potato chips on standby. Get your bubble teas on standby. Nicole has a publishing question. Nicole says that they heard that things are changing at Amazon this year that would have effects on authors and sales. Amazon is always changing things that has an effect on authors and sales. I can speak to the one that is specific to audiobooks because that's the one I've noticed immediately, which is Amazon being Amazon and machinacious, figured out a way to slash the listing prices of audiobooks so that they are still collecting the same amount of money via Audible because they make their money from the subscription on Audible, but they're actually paying authors much less per book that they're serving via Audible. So Amazon collects the same amount of money but is paying us quite a bit less. So I have already seen, I would say, at least a 30% drop in what I'm getting for my audiobooks from Amazon. So yeah. And that's not because they're giving you guys a deal on that subscription or anything like that. That's because they're just taking the profits for themselves. This all has to do with the fact that Amazon's changing its business model in general. They're moving from onboarding new Prime members and things like that to just price gouging. So if you are somebody who uses Amazon a lot, I admit to this, I do this, you're going to start to notice a lot of little buggy things. It's going to be harder to return stuff, I think. You're going to see price increases. You'll probably, like Prime membership might go up. Audible subscription membership might go up, things like that. And this Amazon now has to pay the Pied Piper. They're now switching their business model to paying their stockholders and shareholders and stuff. And that means they have to really start turning a profit. And me, the author, but also me, the customer, and you, the customer, is how they get that profit. So expect to start feeling it some way or another. But yes, authors are always sort of one of the cheapest venues Amazon has because so much of us are so ensorcelled. It's the word I'm looking for. Bespelled by Amazon. We're very much like have to put our books on Amazon in order to make a living, and Amazon knows that. So they often like roll out things with us, test things with us first that take advantage of us because they can, because most of us are have to be in that system whether we like it or not. Which is not to say you should jump off Amazon or anything like that. If it's the way you want to get your books, then by all means get my books on Amazon. They have made it convenient and easy, and there's a lot to be said for that. Just be aware that like it might not continue to be cheap. That old diagram, right? Fast, cheap, good. Just be aware. Amazon's playing some games with that diagram. Yes, Robert, very good point. So Robert has pointed out that Kobo Plus is now available to the US. So if you are a KU subscriber, I know I don't have a lot of readers who are, but if you are, Kobo Plus is a competitor for KU, and it heretofore, because Kobo is a Canadian company, was only offered in Canada, but now it's offered in the UK and in the US. And I can tell you that authors are really excited about it. And you're probably going to see quite a few authors who aren't in KU in Kobo Plus. So because Kobo Plus's terms for authors are a lot kinder to us and more generous. So we can still sell our books elsewhere. Amazon demands exclusivity. Kobo Plus does not. So if you're interested in leaving Amazon's for any reason, Amazon's platform, just know that there's now a new subscriber, book subscription service, Kobo Plus. And I can tell you from an author perspective that Kobo's really nice to work with. I really like them. I actually use their app on my iPad and on my phone for reading on the go. I prefer Kobo's app to the Kindle app. I think it's a much better app. It's just more intuitive and smarter. It's faster. So I highly recommend their app. They have a lot of free books and stuff like that, so if you want to just bop over and try it out, it doesn't cost anything. You can just download the app and then read some free books and see if you like it. But their Kobo Plus subscription service is pretty much the same idea as Kindle Unlimited or KU. It's just a lot nicer to the authors. Now, I don't know if I will be in it. I am a little suspicious of subscription services. So as of now, I don't have any particular intention, but I'm also a reluctant adopter. So I'm going to see how some of my author friends do with it and if they like it and stuff like that. And I'll keep you all informed, of course. I'm going to put some of my backlist up there. I'll be interested to see if my publisher puts any of my books in there. They do experiment with my books sometimes. My publishing house does, because they're much older books. So it's going to be really interesting times. Yeah, but if you are looking for a KU alternative, I think Kobo Plus is probably going to be your best bet. And I gotta say, I really love their app. I really love their reading app. I think it works great. Kala, I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce your name. I apologize. Asks, how funny is Divinity 36? It is not as slapstick as the Parasolverse books, but it is not as, okay, I would say it is halfway between these two books. So, Fifth Gender is very funny and very lighthearted, and you can tell just from the opening chapter. It's also very high heat, because that's why it's a GL book. Crud Rat is much more serious. It has a really strong voice, has a really strong character voice. It has some funny moments, but it's not primarily funny. I would say that the Divinity books are halfway, or the Tinkered Starsong books are halfway between the two. There's definitely some funny moments, but it isn't primarily as slapstick and as silly as say Fifth Gender is. So yeah, and part of that is you guys' faults. Blame yourselves. Without question, one of my most popular books I've ever written independently was Ambush or Adore, and that is probably one of the most serious things I've ever written as well. But you loved it. You wrote tons of wonderful reviews for it, and basically it kind of gave me permission to write a little bit more seriously, and I kind of enjoy that. But the Divinity books have a really strong coziness to them. They may not be like laugh out loud as some of my other books, but they're very warm. It's very much like lost in the great void of the stars. How do you find the people who will love you, and what form do those people take? Are they aliens? Are they small furry blue creatures, little cat monkeys? Like, slowly but surely we follow our main character kind of figure that out. So they are hot water bottle books. They are like cozy, warm, friendly books. They just might not be as like giggle festy as some of my other stuff. But I hope you'll still give it a try. They do like make you kind of grin and smile the whole way through. There's not too much pain. There's never too much pain for me. But there's some tense moments in these books, I gotta say. Vex goes to the ringer. 10-minute warning, says Charity. Does anybody have any last final questions? Cozy yet serious space opera. Yeah, this is me. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to write something that doesn't combine about 1 million different genres. Like, people were asking me what these books are about, and I'm just like, well, there's aliens, there's an entertainment system, there's a barista being dragged into it, there's a celebrity rock star romance underpinning, there's it's just a little bit of everything. It's funny and serious, it's poignant, but like super sweet. It's definitely fluffy. Like, it is still me. It still has that fluffy fuzziness. Yeah, that's all the things. I guess I would say it's a hot water bottle. Just be careful. There might be somebody who might cause it to leak a little bit. So it's a slightly dangerous hot water bottle is what the book is. Like, how do you Sorry. How do you sell a book that way? Yeah, I wrote a book. It's a slightly dangerous hot water bottle. It's not really an elevator pitch, is it? Oh my God, I'm losing it. Any last minute questions before we wrap up today? We stayed on topic for a change. It's amazing. Except for a little deviation about Amazon. Space opera fun. Honestly, I really hope you love this cover. It's a big departure for me, right? This is the first time I'm really, aside from the Subterranean covers, I'm really moving in a different direction with my cover art. And I had so much fun with it. Paul, who designed it, he was so glorious to work with. The next 2 covers are gonna be amazing. Yeah, I'm so excited by the cover art. And I gotta tell you a little foreshadowing teaser bit. When the print edition is out, the back cover, it has elements of the front cover, but slightly differently presented, and that's kind of a foreshadow. So I'm even being tricky with the wrap cover. So just you wait. I can't tell you how fun it is. I've been, yeah, and the colors, of course, I love the colors. Right, let's wrap this thing up then. Thank you all so much for showing up. And I hope I get to see at least some of you in Chicago. And if not Chicago, remember I'm coming to Seattle soon. So if you want to see me in person, I'm starting to do in-person stuff again. Yeah, 3 events in Seattle. So come on, Seattle, you can do it. One of them is a charity high tea with Clarion West. So that's up and about. All of this is on the events page of my website. And the Cheer Up will have a sample chapter of Divinity 36 next Cheer Up when it goes out at the beginning of May. So you'll get to read the whole first chapter. That said, if you pre-order it directly from me via my website, you can read that sample chapter right away, but the newsletter is going to get to read it next. That's the exciting bit of the next newsletter. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. I hope you're into this book. I hope you like it. I hope so. I think it's going to be so good. Oh, I love it so much. All right. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will talk to you next month when you will get to hear me, the very crazy Gail's actually going to read you some of her book out loud. I mean, I honestly, I never do that. I think it must have been 10 years since I've done that. So it's going to be interesting. Take care. Be good to yourself. Be good to others if you can. And eat the cheese, have tasty nibbles and delicious tea. And I'll see you all in the month.